All right. So, anyways,
Okay.
so welcome. Happy Juneteenth. We'll just start. We'll just start from
Yeah,
the
what's
beginning.
up? Yeah, happy Juneteenth there, guys. Glad to see you all.
We'll cut all that out.
We'll cut it all out. We did try this a minute ago. So, before I guess the previous clip, I was just talking a little bit about Juneteenth and
So we started out. So somebody on Twitter actually messaged me on Twitter and said, "Hey, you guys really should do a video on Juneteenth." And I was like, and we had already actually right after we did the last live stream on Tuesday, we were sitting around and we were talking about it, and we kind of came up with what we thought was a really good idea, and we're like, "Hey, let's sleep on it, and
Yeah.
then Thursday we'll shoot it, right?"
Next
So
day.
yeah, it was Wednesday.
Oh yeah, it was
we had
Wednesday.
church and stuff
Yeah,
on
it was
Wednesday.
church. Yeah, got
So
it.
Thursday we did shoot something, and then he was editing it, and yeah, it didn't flow, man. So.
It didn't flow. Like we put a lot of time into like we're not just a point and shoot. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Yeah.
We we take some time in the editing and the message and what we're trying to explain, making sure that get across. We want it meaningful but yet entertaining. And what we shot, it was entertaining. It was good. But the meaningful, the message, it was unclear. I think that's what it was. It was really unclear.
Yeah. See,
It wasn't.
we want to simplify complex topics to where people can understand, like a libertarian or a I want to say anti-government,
Mhm.
but try to show it from a point of view that's counter to what mainstream media politicians are trying to shove down your throats. But
Right.
trying to give you another perspective on reality, so to speak, and educate at the same time and entertain at the same time. So there's a lot goes into these videos.
Yeah.
But the main thing that we focus on in these videos more than anything else is the message.
Yeah, and not just the message, and the reason why it makes it so hard for us is because not just focusing on the message, but we're focusing on how the message is presented to a wide range. Because we're not just speaking to a older generation, or not just libertarians.
Oh, wow,
So
yeah.
we are so focused on how can we make sure we incorporate it so young, old, libertarians, Democrats, maybe his 5-year-old, his 6-year-old will like, okay, I kind of get what's going on here. So balancing that, and that's why it takes all the planning. And when that message is only getting through to just the editors, or just us, or just libertarians, it misses the mark for us because, like I said, we put a lot of pride in making sure everyone, ages, no matter what your age, your denomination, or whatever. So what we had filmed, it just didn't, and it didn't do justice to Juneteenth, which is such a big day, and we didn't want to mess that up. So I woke up early in the morning. I was like, no, we can't do that.
And the thing was, is what really made us want to do the video is right after we ended the stream on Tuesday, we were actually doing a little research on Juneteenth. And there was the Democrats had posted a video.
They did.
The Republicans and Donald Trump have like a letter that they posted. But the Democrats posted a video, and it was a guy rapping, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty good rap, right? And he was like, I have no idea what Juneteenth is still. Did absolutely no. So what we really wanted to, we could. That's what we said was we can do better than that.
Right.
We can do something that will do Juneteenth right, do it right, and so we shot it, and it just missed the mark. You know what I mean? It just wasn't as inspiring. It didn't flow, and that's my thing. Is it's always got to flow.
It got to flow.
So he messaged me this morning, and he's like, it didn't work, man. And I sent him a
tried.
thumbs up. So I knew it. I just kind of knew it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, and I tried, and when I go, and then when I gotta try so hard, I know something's wrong because you just flow. The editing flows too,
right? Yeah. Like
flows.
with the Endure, man. That thing probably took us 2 hours to shoot. It was, everything was just like boom, boom. I was like, like the caution tape.
That was easy to edit.
Oh yeah, it was just super quick. This one was just like, so. Maybe next Juneteenth we'll have something solid for you.
We do. But that's why we do want to spend time, I guess, today, kind of really kind of talking about it. Definitely, if understand, because I guess it kind of started with Abe Lincoln,
Old Abe, Honest Abe.
Honest Abe,
So I want to, before you get, for all of you that are wondering if a third party has ever won the presidency, because the Libertarians, we're considered a third party. We kind of consider ourselves a second party now, because you have the government party, which is a combination of the
those two
Democrats and the Republicans,
okay.
and then we're the second choice.
That's
So you can pick Demo-Republican, or you can pick the Libertarians. But
this is tweet stuff.
I know, right? It's already been tweeted.
Has it already
LP,
been tweeted?
LP Texas.
Okay.
If you don't follow the Libertarian Party of Texas with Randy Simbro and the whole communications team there, they put out some killer tweets.
That's
man.
pretty good.
So, but anyways, the last time a third party won the presidency, we got the slaves freed, because Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, and at the time, Republicans were a third party.
Oh.
Didn't know that, did you?
No.
It was like the Stag Party or something like that.
Oh,
I
okay.
forget. It's like a 4-letter word.
Oh, wow.
So it was the Democrats. The Democrats were the pro-slavery, majority South party, and then there was I can't remember the name of the other party, but it was like a 4-letter word.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and then Abe was a Republican, which was actually a third party at the time.
Third party.
So
Oh, wow. Too cool.
So can you imagine if we elected a third party again? Can you imagine the great evolution we could have in society once again?
Right. There you go. I mean, so when Abe Lincoln, it's so funny because the Democrats, they were some of the leading states. They were kind of against. They knew what was going to happen. I guess Abe Lincoln, well before the act and well before he became president, he was already out and about, kind of campaigning or whatnot, because they already knew that Abe was bringing.
Mm-hmm.
They said it in 1861.
This dude taking our workers.
Yeah, they're like, if he gets elected, y'all know that he's thinking about, we're not going to have this white supremacist, this institution of slavery, so if he become president, we need to do something. And at the time, I guess assassination was a little too early, off the plate, and so they had decided, okay, well, if we're not under the United States, if we're not under the Union,
assassinating him would have just martyred him at the time.
Yeah, true. It would guarantee.
That would have definitely kicked off the Civil War.
Oh yeah, for sure. So these states, they were like, all right, so the best option we have is to just not proclaim him as our leader. We're not a part of the United States anymore. So, there were like 9 states, what they were called the Confederate States. They all came together before he got elected. They came together. The Confederate States. This was created before. This was created, and they decided. There was Texas, Missouri. There was 9 of them.
All the southern states.
I had my notes.
South Carolina,
Mississippi,
Alabama,
South
Georgia.
Carolina. Yeah, those. It was 9 of them, and they were like, all right, we're the Confederate States of America. But when Abe Lincoln came into office, he was like, we don't recognize you guys as a governing body. That's not legit and whatnot. So, but anyway, he ended up passing the Emancipation, that proclamation allowing, hey, all slaves need to be free. The Confederates, they like, we're not a party. They didn't abide by it. The Texas and whatnot, they didn't abide by it. So we're gonna fight up against. So they fought, and we had Civil War. And they got pretty bloody, and it got pretty messy. We're fighting against
the bloodiest war in American history.
Yeah.
I still think the death toll in the Civil War is equal to all the other wars combined.
It was insane, and
everybody that died on both sides were Americans. So.
You know who was not in the war? Who I'm kind of proud of?
Switzerland?
No.
Switzerland's always
my home, Delaware.
Maryland?
Delaware and Maryland. Delaware and Maryland, they were border states. See, there were 3 parts. There were the Confederate States.
Well, Maryland borders on Washington, D.C.
No, but check this out. The Confederate States, then you had the Union States, and then we had we had a separate government. Virginia, Delaware, and Maryland we were bordered. We had our we had our own sense of government. Because these states we bordered.
Is that why they call it the Commonwealth of Virginia?
No, we were just called the border states. You look it up. We were just the border states, and we had our own government. Because the thing is,
there was a lot of battles going on there.
There were, but we were not. We were on both sides.
We're not playing.
No, we didn't. We were on both sides because
we like that one kid that's like, I'm not playing. I'm not playing.
That's exactly what it was. They were running a libertarian government. Literally, let me explain.
Really?
Let me explain what Delaware and Maryland was doing. They allowed. Hey, if you want to own slaves, you can. If you didn't, so there were a part that was in Maryland
and
Delaware.
That's all libertarian.
It's not. But they were given free will to. If you want to, hey. But the government never.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, libertarian.
I was just saying.
If you weren't a slave.
Yeah. If you want. Yeah, that's right. If you
not very libertarian for the slaves.
If you wasn't a slave, so Delaware. Because here's the thing, they were right on the border, so a part of them felt sorry for the. They felt sorry for the Confederate states because they was like, oh man, you're gonna have all these, how you guys gonna get this cotton and whatnot. So a part of it felt, but then the other part, it was so divided that Maryland and Delaware, they had nothing to do. And you know a big part of it was, well before, and check this out, before Abraham Lincoln had even signed that it was law and rules, well before 1863, and like 1861, 1860 even, Delaware and these border states, they were already abolishing slavery. There was almost there was almost no slavery. And you know why? Because mainly was due to farming and cotton. There was not a lot of farming and cotton. Their economy did not rely on that.
On that manual labor.
Yeah, they didn't rely on that. So they had no need for slaves. So what they did for the economy, they got most of their money. They got most of their money by selling the slaves that was still around and trading goods and trading slaves that the South needed. That's how they had no need. And it speaks volume. But yeah, look it up. Delaware and Maryland. It's insane. Like they were like, no, we didn't. So finally, and finally, it wasn't until the 13th Amendment. It was ratified that they decided, hey, it wasn't until after the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln, he was pushing really hard he knew that he could not win the Civil War without Maryland and Delaware. He needed these border states because they had to go through there, and they, as far as goods and war supplies, they needed that for their people to get through. So they needed these states on their side. So he knew that he had to. But like I said, but yeah, look it up. Look at border states. It's very funny, but they were like, and you'll see in history, because I did a whole research on it, and my video, in which I already shot today, I just didn't edit it. I went back and looked back at the border states and different things. I re-looked this up, and I was like, yeah, Delaware and Maryland, it was like,
that's interesting.
We're not doing this. We're not a part. So they literally had parts of Delaware was like, hey, and the governing body was like, if you want to, you can. If you don't, you don't have to, because it was on the border. And
yeah.
So much
of it was about freedom back then. It was all about how
That's
much as a young country still we have these massive amount of laws on our books now that's just ridiculously complicated. But back then it was really simple.
It was.
And we had like a lot less population, but our founding fathers wanted to try to keep it simple. And it's really not a matter of abolishing slavery, like the 13th Amendment. So Emancipation Proclamation was 1863. That's what kicked off the Civil War. And then in June, so everybody else was freed except for Texas. Texas was trying to get that last cotton crop in or something, right? And the thing was, is they were like, oh, the argument again to not abolish slavery was that, oh, it's going to devastate the economy and all this. I had somebody actually compare that to socialism.
Wow.
It's like, I was like, because, you know, socialism will completely destroy our economy. He's like, oh, yeah, well, that's what they said about slavery, too, about ending slavery. And I'm like,
no,
it's not completely irrelevant.
Do
It's like, you talk about straw manning an argument. I was like, really? But anyways, so yeah, they thought it would devastate the economy, and what happened is the economy actually flourished because the free slaves went out and actually created wealth themselves. So the economy actually grew whenever they ended slavery and freed the slaves, and they had to be more efficient with their workforce because you know, they couldn't just go buy a bunch of slaves and work them to death. Now they had to actually pay them. So they had to have a much more efficient workforce. And with that more efficient workforce, they got more done, and it cost less labor, and the economy grew. So the economy was actually the exact opposite of what the South was complaining would happen if they ended slavery. But the 13th Amendment didn't get ratified until June 19th, 1865 is Juneteenth. That's when the last slaves were freed in Texas.
Like in December.
Ratified. In December of 1865, it was actually ratified. Mm-hmm. So that was actually when they actually passed an amendment, the most unnecessary amendment as far as I'm concerned, in the Constitution is the 13th. The only thing that really makes it necessary is it establishes the point that it is no longer acceptable to own slaves of any kind.
Yeah, that institution.
That institution of slavery and indentured servitude. Mm-hmm. So where you can't force somebody to work for you just because they owe you money, which happens still around the world. It's just another indentured servitude is just another form of slavery. So, I mean, it makes sense to have it in there for that. But really, the first preamble to the Constitution says that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, just based on that preamble, it tells you that everybody is created equal.
Exactly.
And, you know, so what they did was they actually had to make the slaves into less of a person. So they had to deem them not human, not a man. You know, so
and that's what that's what makes Juneteenth, the celebration so essential, because I hear, I was looking around, there are actually groups, on Twitter and Facebook, and they protest. I guess with everything, they protest this day. Mm-hmm. That they should not have. Why is there a Juneteenth? Yeah, there's like big, massive.
That's
groups.
Weird.
Because they, just like they do with Black History Month, they use the same argument. Why every month is, and why you got to put a separate month for Black History? Why?
I used to, and a lot of these points that get brought up, libertarianism actually opened my mind a lot to a whole different way of thinking as far as social issues like that. Because I used to think that way too. It's like, why do we have to we don't have an Italian History Month, and I'm Italian, So, and I was like, I used to think the same way. But, I realize now that we need to acknowledge these things that happened in our past.
And that's one part of the argument, and part of what I was looking at on Twitter, because I go in these groups and I look at the hate, and I see they had thousands and thousands of people that hate Juneteenth. And the biggest thing that I seen was one was like they got to get over it. So long ago.
It's not about getting it over it. It's so we need to just so 4th of July, we just need to get over it. Get over Britain already. You know what I mean?
But can I say something?
It's our second independence. Yeah. It's when the rest of our citizens were actually free.
That's a myth in itself that it was so long ago, because it wasn't.
No,
I mean, think about it.
Right.
I mean, we literally when you think about it like this, Black people have literally been enslaved longer than they've been free. I mean, we've been free for about 153 years. I mean, from that, about 150 from that time of the proclamation of the 13th Amendment, and goes back. And let me tell you, it's funny that about 150 years. That means that generations. That's only like 2 generations to most families. That's not long ago. I mean, that's only about 2 generations.
Great grandparents.
That's not long ago. So stop saying it's been long ago. It's like 2 generations ago of family, and we've been We've been enslaved more than we've been for longer than we've been free.
See, and that's the thing is that you have to, that the reason why we do this is one of the realizations a lot of people need to have is so we European settlers got here in the what 1400s 1500s
Yeah.
Christopher Columbus whatever
Yeah.
so for 400 years you know so slavery I think it was 400 years 300 400 years I think yeah so I think it was 1400s 1496 or something like that I don't know I'm not a history professional so it was like 400 years of slavery, and then that have basically been freed for what 100 and so 1865, 70 years, 170 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So the thing about that is that you have to realize is that so white people or anybody else in America had 400-year head start on establishing generational wealth and experience throughout because you pass on experiences like especially back in those days if I'm a carpenter I'm going to teach my kids to be a carpenter well they were slaves so all they could do is teach their kids to be slaves all the way up until 1865 so we've had why we have 8, 9, 10 generations not me I mean my family just came here in early 1900s but generally the European settlers they've had 8, 9, 10 generations head start of building wealth and experience and climbing that corporate ladder ahead of the slaves that eventually got freed and so they had 3 generations max 3 maybe 4 generations max that to build your wealth
off the backs of African
Americans.
Yeah, right. Most of
so they were the ones that were managing and maintaining and running these plantations and stuff or whatever. It wasn't just slaves on plantations. There were slaves that did other things too. I mean there was slave labor everywhere. It wasn't just picking cotton. That was a big large portion of it.
Like that's the thing with slavery. Slavery wasn't just picking cotton, but like every aspect of a slave's life, it was marketed. I mean, I read a piece. I read a piece and one basically from a former slave, and he was talking about being auctioned and how his because he had lost his right eye, so he was auctioned. The slave master that was going to buy him lowered the cost because he said like $237. So his right eye was worth $237. So when he said he's only got one eye, you need to bring down the cost, and they brought it down. They negotiate to 200. Every aspect. I mean, these slaves, they were items. They were sold like cars. They were gifts. For your birthday, you get Jamarcus. I mean, now if that sounds not funny and dark, it should be because it was not funny in dark times. But then that's what was happening. I mean,
Where is that Jamarcus?
So it came to my head. Thinking of slave. That was another thing. I was thinking of a slave name, and I'm jumping back to the video that we had shot. I was in this like slave voice, and I was in these like slave clubs. From what I predicted, that's good enough point. But yeah, like that was just another thing that we were items. I know we hit on that, but that's what makes coming from an item, something that you could just gift wrap. Like they were gift wrapping slaves and saying and auction them off and. Like every part, even before your birth, they would calculate how fertile a woman was and estimate how much this new. I mean, it was insane.
To make more slaves.
Yeah, it was
and they beast of burden and breeding stock and stuff. It was crazy. Yeah, it's wild to think that they. That's why I say, and this is. I think it's even more of a celebratory thing than even the 4th of July. I know a lot of Americans will hate me for that.
Yeah.
I might get some hate mail for it. But as a society, I think the significance of fighting the Civil War and finally establishing that it's not right to enslave a person finally established that was such a humongous step for humankind, for our entire human existence, because it showed this evolutionary trend that had been around for thousands of years, for a millennia. It had been accepted. It wasn't just black people that were slaves. I mean, slaves were all over. There's still some, but there's some around the world. But I think the American Civil War and the establishment or the abolishment of slavery was such a significant step for all of humanity. It established in the world vision that slavery is not something that's no longer that's acceptable in society anymore. We're talking about an institution that had been around for thousands of years, for literally probably since the human race had been around.
Yeah.
So on June 19th, 1865, I think was the single most significant, one of the most significant steps as a human race that we took in the evolution of our species. You know, when we finally established that all of us should be treated the same.
So, and you know, so that leads us to,
I think
these
that's what my little thing was about.
these monuments. They have set up these you know, there's Confederate monuments, you know, throughout, you know, our country to remember, you know, remember our history, and that's why a lot of them are, I guess.
On top of George Washington.
Yeah.
George, not Washington. That what they say that was Antifa though.
Yeah.
I think Trump commented on it or something. But no. So before we get into that, this is what I want to talk about was the thing about ratifying when they ratified the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. The government officially banned the right of people to oppress, and henceforth maintained the right of oppression for themselves. Basically, what the government did was they no longer allowed individuals to oppress or enslave each other. But they can still oppress and enslave us. So they basically created a monopoly on oppression. So now the government actually has the monopoly of force and oppression. Because I'm eager to hear another institution, especially in America, another institution that can oppress us, that is not the government or controlled by the government.
So true.
So they have a monopoly on oppression, and if you think
monopoly over oppression.
any form, any violation of our liberty, our freedom, absolute freedom. So just think of absolute freedom. So any restriction upon that is considered a level of oppression. I mean, you should literally be able to go out and, I mean, well, if you were completely free, you would be able to go out and do whatever you want. You could, you know, total anarchy, right? As they would call it, anarchy. Yeah. So any level, any restrictions upon that freedom is considered oppression. So the amount, so government's the only institution that can oppress us, that oppresses our liberties and our freedoms. So it's just a matter of how much oppression are you okay with?
It's true.
Libertarians think that, you know, and that's really the bar that we should show, right? Is each political party, how much oppression is that political party okay with?
Yeah.
Like Democrats and Republicans are going to be over here with oppression, and Libertarians will be somewhere around here, and over here is going to be anarchy.
Oh,
so
that's
just
true.
about absolute freedom.
Like
that. That's the way our mentality is.
Absolute freedom. I think that's the word there. Wow.
It's scary. It is really scary, and I think that's what really hinders the Libertarian Party. But there's a great podcast. I'm going to link it right now. It was done yesterday. The Libertarian Party TV did a podcast on Juneteenth, and it had John Mons, who's African-American presidential candidate.
Okay.
He ran against Joe Jorgensen. He came in second place. Texas, by coincidence, he won Texas by a lot.
Wow.
So Texas being the last state to, he was like 27 delegates to like 9.
What?
Yeah, John Mons blew Texas. And then same thing, so once he didn't win the presidency, then he threw his name in for vice president.
Okay.
And he won as vice president for Texas too. So Texas wanted John Mons. Joe Jorgensen was our second choice, so we got our second choice. And that was same thing for me. John Mons was my first choice. Just the humble leader.
Yeah,
I really liked him. So he was on there. The person who's running as a Libertarian for governor of California, his name is Nicholas Wildstar.
Okay.
He's really good too. Larry Sharp, I think, jumps on there, and what's his name? Dr. Adam something. So So yeah, I even forgot what my point was.
No, I just want to say, yeah, it's funny, but it speaks volume of how we are constantly, as we age, as a country, you know, we are slowly finding things not gonna play the podcast, finding things not
No, there.
we don't
Oh,
want
you
to
know what? I
anymore.
sent myself. You know what? Let me play a portion of it.
Yeah,
You might enjoy this. It's we'll stop it whenever. But
yeah.
it's Dr. Aaron Lewis, and he's gonna be the one talking. I just remembered I sent myself a link with a really good
Good
part.
to see you duos back, Champ said. All right, this is good. You all are doing it justice. All right, Bernie. I'm on it. I'm reading your comments.
Oh, you're reading my comments?
Yeah.
Bernie's on there?
Bernie. Champs is on there. Dave Lover on there. Telltale. Hey, Tells.
Is this it?
No, so I don't get that echo. Let me get my headphones back here.
Okay, here it is. Yeah, that's who's it. No, not that one.
And don't start it
Copy.
just yet. Let me pick
Okay,
up
actually, I'm going to share it here. So I'm going to share it on here. Yeah, it's Dr. Aaron Lewis. So. Oh, never mind. I seen all these comments. I'm not paying attention. Where did mine go? Oh, here it is. What's up, Champones? Yeah. So then we wanted to take it to the. So it was interesting because it is such a celebration because it is I always say that it's Independence Day Part Two, right? It's our Independence Part Two. I don't like to say it's the second half or whatever because I still don't think that we're totally free. I don't think we've reached that point yet as a society, and definitely we weren't at that point then because yeah, okay, they freed them, so now they were free. But then there were all these restrictions and further oppression placed on them. They weren't actually free. They couldn't go get the same jobs as everybody else. They didn't they couldn't get the same schooling as everybody else. They couldn't. I mean, it was so many. It was almost easier. Can you imagine once they were freed? It was almost easier to be a slave because they couldn't go. They had the only experience they had is what they had learned on while being slaves. They didn't have schooling or anything like that, so the only education they had is whatever they were taught while being slaves.
We were behind.
Yeah,
After.
so far behind, and then they weren't allowed to any of the benefits of society that the white people were allowed at the time. So it wasn't really absolutely, the until the Civil Rights Act of 1965. Was it 1964?
Yeah,
Civil Rights Act of 64 that they actually were considered equal. It wasn't until that where, and look at all of the violence and heartache and pain and suffering that went into another 100 years after, hey, you guys are free, Juneteenth, 1865, yay, we're free. And it wasn't until 1964 that we finally could, we finally were, oh, now we can view you as equals.
Yeah.
So, and I just think the evolution continues.
And we try to. That's one of the things that we try to portray in our video. As far as that was part of the message that we try to portray. After we got free, we were still wondering, like, I was like, okay, what happens next? What do I do now? And it kind of led to a different impression today, which is, we get to welfare, and that leads to a lot of other different stuff, as far as under and over policement in some neighborhoods. But there's a lot of different other things now. But
the thing is even with Juneteenth, the part of the message was that your relationship is no longer that of master and slave, but employer and employee. Basically said you had to pay them now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was real interesting because it kind of goes to the free market concept, and even the argument against minimum wage was that So when they originally were freed, the first thing the plantation owners and the slave masters tried to do was pay. This is where the word slave wages comes from, because they tried to. Oh, okay, well, if I have to pay you, I'm going to pay you a penny.
Yeah.
Right, a penny a week. That's what I'm going to pay you, and then you're going to have to pay me that penny back in order to whatever, right? To drink water while you're working, whatever. So they would. That's what they tried to do. And so because the slaves were free, they were like, well, I'm not working for those conditions. And they would go seek employment somewhere else. And there'll be another plantation owner, a competing plantation owner, will be like, hey, man, that's not right. I'll pay you a nickel and I'll give you the water for free. You know, and I'm going to go over there. So then these plantation owners started competing for the workforce. And then, of course, the better workers would get paid more, and welcome to the free market.
Welcome to the
so it was a total failure to try to pay slave wages. This is all stuff you can research too.
No, that's exactly right.
Mary Ruwart covers it extensively in her book "Healing Our World: The Compassion of Libertarians." And some broke out on their own, entrepreneurs, and so much stuff that was done.
Yeah, we're talking about Juneteenth.
But they still, and you could, if you think about it, man. I mean, even after that, so they were actually freed, but they still had all of these restrictions placed on them. Those books are about to come down. Look at, they're all sliding. If I didn't notice that would probably woke me up in the middle of the night. I'd have came out, guns blazing, man.
What?
Sorry, but yeah. So not only was it the 400 years of slavery, and then they were finally freed in 1865, but then you had another 100 years where they still had all of this restriction placed on them by society, and then now we're looking at, now we've narrowed it down to about 70 years, right?
Oh yeah.
Of actually being considered equal humans, and able to vote, So as soon as they were granted the voting rights, what was interesting is that's where the welfare state came in. You know what I mean? Like, so you had all these restrictions placed on you where you couldn't get the same schooling, where you couldn't get the same experience, where you couldn't get the same housing, you couldn't get the same medical care, So then here comes government, the only institution that can still oppress, offering all these things for you for free. All you have to do is not seek all those things anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's the message we were trying to give in the video.
Right.
What we fell short is that, it's through the welfare state. In order to maintain welfare, you can't go get extensive schooling. You can't get a high-paying job. You can't, and because you can't get a high-paying job, you're not going to qualify for loans. You're not going to qualify for housing. Buying a house on your own. You're not going to. You have to stay in Section 8 housing, and then
it's definitely a cycle of oppression.
And this person.
Yeah, it's the government's way to keep you in that slave mentality, to keep control over you with welfare. That's what some people don't see. And when you're on welfare, freedom and liberty, it is all about freedom. A big part of freedom and liberty, it's about being able to have that, being able to succeed and have being able to succeed and be successful, outside of someone else making you successful, being able to pursue life and love and happiness according to your own dreams and your own work and everything.
But the risk of failure.
Yeah, and the risk of failure. But with welfare, the government controls. It controls your outcome. It makes sure you get the same thing. You get the same thing, and you think the same thing in the same way, day after day. What you had yesterday is what you're getting tomorrow. That's what welfare does. It doesn't push you. It doesn't push you um, out of its cycle. Hey, I've got this house. You'll have this house. You'll be in this neighborhood. You'll be under this law. You'll get this much.
And as long as you keep voting for the Democrat,
you'll get this much food.
You're going to continue to get it.
You'll always get this much food this month. You'll always be in this same neighborhood. You'll always be around these same cops. You know, the welfare keeps you in the cycle as not until, and that's what it does. And like I said, I know personally, it doesn't welfare. It doesn't push you to be greater. It pushes you to be.
It's the exact opposite.
Yeah, it does the exact opposite.
And it's interesting. I don't like to target a single party, and I don't usually talk about the other political parties a lot, but I can't help but talk about it here because it always seems like the Democratic Party is always trying to cater to the minorities, especially blacks and women and the people living on the margins. So everybody thinks that the Democrats are like the party of the minority when it's exactly the opposite. I mean, they are so anti-minority. I mean, because exactly what they talked about welfare. You know, the Democrats are the biggest proponents of the welfare state. The welfare state is one of the biggest reasons why we can't open our borders right now. You know, why we can't allow immigration in a more expansive process. It would be great for our economy, but as long as we're maintaining a welfare state, we can't do that. And another thing is the Democrats are so anti-Second Amendment, anti-self-defense. Now, I was going to do a whole video on this, and I might still do it. But basically, the Second Amendment is designed for those living on the margins. It's your self-defense. It's your ability to defend. Guns are the ultimate equalizer in this world. If you eliminated guns, then anybody stronger and faster and better trained than you would own you.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have any equalizer. So guns are designed for minorities, for the poor in the poorest neighborhoods to protect yourselves. You know, for the LGBTQ community who have this group of people that hate you just for who you think you are. You know, who you believe you are to be. You know, that's to protect you. For women who are naturally built, not as strong as men. So you're not overpowered by a man. The gun is the greatest equalizer. So why is it that the Democratic Party wants to remove the single most equalizing factor in their predominant voter base, self-defense? I don't understand that. And yet the minorities and those on the margins flock to the Democratic Party, and they're chanting this. They're chanting this from their rooftops, and I'm like, you're chanting to eliminate your own equalizer in self-defense. You're chanting to force your own oppression. You know, you're rallying behind the worst party that you have. You know, and like I said, with freedom comes risk, but the reward, you know?
No, that's so true. That's 100% true. I mean,
Jen Backer said, "Do you think Abe Lincoln was the best Republican ever?" Man, it's hard to argue not. You know what I mean? I mean, there's been some great Republicans, you know, throughout history. Whether he was the great Republican ever, you know, I don't know. I'd have to look name by name. But, I mean, you could just say, do you think Abe Lincoln was one of the greatest presidents ever? It's, you know, there's some arguments about principles and constitutional principles that Abe kind of wasn't 100%. So Abe Lincoln, the one of the at the same time he was freeing the slaves, he was also granting a massive amount of centralized power to the federal government over the states. So he eliminated a lot of, so the 10th Amendment of the United States, of the Constitution, granted anything not covered in the Constitution to the states. So that's why they had to put the 13th Amendment in the Constitution so that it would actually be applied to the states. So, I mean, that's why the whole Civil War was fought. So, but what he did, the Emancipation Proclamation was an executive order. It didn't go through Congress. So he pinned that sucker in there. You know what I mean? And so he expanded federal power so much, and it kind of led down this rabbit hole to this humongous government that we have now. Prior to Abe Lincoln, federal government was severely limited in its power. The states had the most power.
I mean, Abe Lincoln, he, those states that he needed. I was talking about Maryland and Delaware. I don't know if we got that part on this part. I was talking about Maryland and Delaware.
Oh yeah,
but
I think we did. Yeah.
Did we? Was it this part after we
got
the
mic fixed?
Right.
Was it? I don't know.
I don't even know. But talking about Maryland, he really needed like these border states, and some didn't. Wasn't submitting fast enough, and he needed them to win. And I mean, talking about power and federal government. Abe, he sent troops in like, hey, he was sending troops in. Hey, we're gonna kill. You guys join the union, or let's send troops in. Come on, either you're with us or you're for us. You're not straddling the fence. There came a point where he submitted. He was he was one of the guys. Like I said. Like I said, Abe Lincoln, he did something, but he was definitely, you can just tell him what he did through history. You can definitely get a sense of his personality. Hey, this is what it is.
He was one of the, how Trump and Obama were both, the pen is mighty, you know what I mean? Like, if I can't get it past Congress, I'm going to sign an executive order. Abe Lincoln was the first one who did that. I mean, he was like, y'all ain't going to do it, I'm going to do it myself, you know what I mean? He was the first one to expand that executive order.
And those that didn't, and the thing with Abe back there, those that didn't, like, abide by his executive orders, I'm like, Trump, I think, when you look at it, you kind of would want, I would kind of want Trump than Abe, because Abe was like, I made an executive order, you not abide by it, we're killing you. I'm bringing troops in.
Basically, I mean, Trump says the same thing.
He's literally brought troops in.
Show up to my rally in Oklahoma and see what happens. He just tweeted that out this morning. Did you see that?
I didn't see it.
Yeah, his first show up, protest my rally, see what happens.
Really? I gotta see that. That's so funny. So Abe Lincoln, he was like, hey, this nigga.
So Trump, Chambon says Trump is the best president ever. If you mean the best representation of the Democratic and Republican parties combined into one, yeah, he is definitely that. Because he is definitely all Democrat, Republican, all bound up into one. Yeah. I mean, it's real simple for libertarians now. It's because, hey, look, they're the same.
Yeah. But
it's like I was telling you. If somebody ever asked, you're going to vote for, if you had to vote for Biden or Trump, who would you vote for? And I'd be like, thank God I don't have to vote for that. Because they're exactly the same. Biden, Trump, same thing. I will go ahead and vote for Joe.
I'll vote for Joe. Yeah, and so with Juneteenth, there's something else that came up. So they have these. Tell me what you think about this. They block the major streets. I seen it today on. Maria shared it, and I thought he's not laughing. But it's a big, massive thing.
I might have to talk to her about, but you can't be that much behind somebody who is so far from Christ, so far.
But yeah, so they are part of the Juneteenth celebration. You have the parties, the festivals, the music, and whatnot. But another thing they do is the organizers in 5 states they have they want to hold. They said they hold for 3 hours. It is illegal, but for 3 hours they hold the most busiest intersection. The tons of people and truckers get mad, but just to show the oppression.
Why is it illegal?
Because you can't block a busy.
Really?
Yeah.
So do they not block it when the president's motorcade comes through?
Right. I guess he got.
Is it equally as illegal?
Yeah. Still, I guess the president got like permits.
Like I said, I mean, it's nice that they have a monopoly on oppression, so they can oppress us that we can't do it, but they don't have to apply it to themselves.
Oh,
and it happens throughout. It happens throughout everything. That the laws don't apply to them. But that's why we need to vote Libertarian, because Libertarians won't have that action. Any law that applies to the citizens will apply to all the citizens, including those that work in government. Like the the thing. Oh yeah, it's mandatory. Mandatory. You have to buy into this healthcare system, but we're going to add this exemption for members of Congress. It's like no, no, you are not allowed to pass legislation that you exempt yourself from. Yeah, so.
No, 100, 100. So, I guess that is the big thing with Juneteenth, and I think that's why. Go ahead.
But I want to play this before we get off of Juneteenth real quick. This is only a few minutes.
Yeah.
But this is Dr. Aaron Lewis. I saved this portion because it talks significantly about what I was just saying about especially about the Democratic Party. Go ahead and go full screen with it. Pop it up here. So this is the podcast from last night. So this is just really, I listened to most of it, and this is just really kind of a condensed portion where he really hits on some seriously good points. So hopefully you guys will be able to hear this well. Nope, you're not hearing it at all.
No.
Why is it? Oh, you know what? This thing does that. All right.
You understand? Because a white Democrat, and I'm not saying all, so I'm not generalizing, but many, particularly those at the top level, the white Democrats are going to teach black people, especially impoverished black people, how to think in a way to keep them elected so that they can perpetuate the cycle of their crimes against humanity. That's what they do. And so we have to understand, number one, that the party is not, the Democratic Party is not the savior party. That's the first thing that they have to understand. It's not the savior party. I love the fact that libertarianism represents, like my brother John Mount said, it represents freedom. It is the only party that stands out with that ethic. Freedom and liberty. The only party. And secondly, it represents for every black person, Latino, every minority on the planet, anybody that comes through these stores and touches America, it represents a choice. And so when you hijack the system, where you got this big giant bald eagle, and you got one wing called the Republicans and the other wing called the Democrats, it's the same bird. And they're flying the same place. One hangs out in the south, during the winter. The other one hangs out in the north it's the same bird. And when you understand that, you get caught out. And that's why I think most Americans are. I think most Americans need to be libertarians and say the heck with this nonsense. I'm leaving a parties that don't represent the interests of the people, because as you were saying and alluding to, Alex, that we're not all free. None of us are free. And so we have to get to that mentality that when you suffer, I feel it. You understand? So we have to understand the balance of both individualism, which I believe in, and collectivism, which I believe in. You can't have a both, and there can't be a healthy balance of both. And it looks nothing like socialism, and God knows it looks nothing like not socialism, communism. Nothing like it. It has no semblance of that. It looks like the America that we envision could be a reality. And that's what I really believe.
Well, Alex, in answering your question about moments when you think you've had a breakthrough, a lot of times you don't know, but that's why messaging is so important. It's like planting seeds. You don't.
So yeah, that's Kid Play said we got to admit Dems are more for blacks than Republicans, but they're not. You're absolutely wrong about that. They want you to think that. So they say that a lot, but every action that they do actually just says that blacks are not equal. You know what I mean? Every time they say that, oh, you need help because you're black. You know what I mean? We need to help our minorities, because it's sending a message that they are somehow less than everybody else. I'm not saying that people don't need a helping hand every once in a while, but they've created a system that is a cycle of poverty that just continues to hold minorities in this impoverished state. So absolutely not. Democrats are not. They are not the party of immigration. They're not the party of minorities. Republicans aren't much better, but at least they have more of a sense of constitutional liberty. And really, I would challenge somebody to give me a direct. I mean, I can give you direct democratic laws and stuff that are targeted to minorities to keep them oppressed or to hold them down. I would be hard pressed to find a modern Republican policy that was designed, that was racially motivated. I mean, the Jim Crow laws were all by Democrats. I mean, every racially motivated legislation that's been established. I mean, even the Civil Rights Act was written by John F. Kennedy. That was Democratic. So I mean, and that was that was great because it created and it actually wasn't until the Voting Rights Act of the next year that we had the same voting rights.
Yeah.
So it's half of one and six and one, half a dozen in the other. Really, I mean, it's. Republicans more or less have just tried to maintain the status quo when it comes to race relations or anything like that. I used to argue all the time about what do they call it? Affirmative action.
Yeah.
Whether affirmative action was a good thing or a bad thing. And I used to argue that there's a lot of libertarians that argue that it's just all bad because it for one thing it would force schools and stuff to place black people into institutions where they might not be able to compete. So it actually made them feel even worse. You know what I mean? So say Harvard, affirmative action says that Harvard has to allow so many African Americans into their school, and the mandatory test score to get into this particular program, SAT was 2,500 or something like that. I don't know what SAT score is.
Yeah.
But, because they have to allow because of affirmative action, they have to allow a certain number of African Americans in. They have, maybe there's none that could score 2,500, but since they have to do it, they're going to have to find somebody to put in that program because of affirmative action. So they take somebody with a lower test score, they get into the actual classes, and they can't compete. So they can't. And then so they end up dropping out. They lose money. They lose all that time that they spent in trying to get that education and stuff, and it's really deflating. So
the programs that the Democrats set, like you said, you gotta look at it when you really look beyond the curtain and you look at it for what it is, especially with welfare. It is definitely a modern day, slavery. I mean, you think of all the aspects of welfare today and what slavery looked like. Okay, slavery, they told you, you were sold and you were told where to work. Modern day welfare. If you're on welfare, you can't work there or you're no longer on. You have to either work at these low-cost places or you're not getting welfare. Or under the table. So
black market type.
So it tells you, just like slavery, where you got to work. Okay, and slavery, they were given what to eat, when to eat, and where to eat.
Food stamps.
Food stamps. Tell you what you can buy, where you can buy it from, what you can eat, what you cannot. Every aspect of slavery is embedded. Everything. All right. So how about my plantation, my housing, my covering? All right. The slaves were told.
They were given a house. They had the slave house, the slave quarters.
The slave quarters. Once again, Section 8, welfare today. You're given what neighborhoods where Section 8 will be, where you can get apartments.
And they're all huddled up in the same spot.
We're telling you where. Every single
and everybody
aspect.
In that housing is all on welfare.
So, and then some will say, well, there's just one evolve. There's one aspect. At least we're not getting the lashings. We're not getting the beatings. But aren't you? But are you not really? Think about it. Like, you are getting penalized for you're getting penalized. You're probably not getting a physical beating, but your liberties, your freedom, your success, all these are taking a beating. Every time you spend those food stamps, every time, every single day, you're at your freedom, your liberty. All this, you're getting the beating. And not just that, just your goals in life is taking a beating because they're telling you where. But I that's just the way I see it. Like, and you look at it, there's not, even down to what the slaves could dress. I mean, slaves back then, before, this is what Juneteenth is so great, but they were even told, they could not walk, they could not wear, they did not want these people to dress up. You could not dress up. It was illegal for slaves to like dress up. They didn't want you, to even look look like them. It was interesting, man. So, and just like today, you are told, yeah.
Kind of goes to what you were saying.
Oh, okay, yeah. We can play a little clip, a part of it. If you
so this is this is a little clip of what we filmed. Yesterday. Yesterday. So this is a little clip of what we filmed yesterday from our attempt at a Juneteenth Libertarian Minute. So it's just a little clip of it. Hold on a second. Let me turn up the volume. All right.
And stay on your welfare program? It's up to you.
I wanted to do bigger and better things. I didn't want to like stay on welfare, but I do need it right now.
You're free man. You're free. You can make the decision how you want. You're free.
It feels like I'm sorry, sir, but I'm not feeling free. I feel still chained by, I guess, law and welfare at this time. I'm sorry.
This has been another Libertarian Minute.
And stay on.
So that was our
Yeah.
brief attempt at it.
Exactly what we
Yeah.
were. Exactly what we were saying. Keeps you in that cycle.
And then so the it was a lot of there was a lot. I know Fighter, maybe you didn't catch the beginning where we were talking about why we didn't put that video out.
Okay.
Yeah, but so what the concept was he found a job, a really good job, and had great opportunities for advancement, and he would be able to get off of welfare and be on his own in less than a year. But the job started, if he started the job, then he got off welfare. Welfare, he would no longer qualify, and that's really what happens most of the time. An entry-level position, you're cut from welfare, and chances are those entry-level positions aren't going to provide housing and medical benefits and food stamps and all those things you get from welfare. So people just won't take those jobs. Now, in a year or so, or 6 months even, or 3 months, you may come off of probation at that job and be able to qualify for all those benefits. But how are you going to live for 3 months, especially if you have a family? And then, if you're married, literally, if like for women on welfare, with kids, like if baby daddy's living in the house with them, they no longer qualify for welfare. That's literally like the disintegration of the family. And I was sharing with him that the statistics, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's like if you're a white person, the amount of white people in poverty is like 12%. The amount of black people in poverty is like 22%. It's pretty significant. It's like, I think 20 or 22%. But the amount of married black people in poverty is 9%. So it's actually married black people in poverty is lower than the poverty rate of white people.
Yeah.
So it shows the significance of the family atmosphere and how important family is to African Americans. Just as much, if not more, than anybody else on the planet. And the welfare system actually disintegrates that family atmosphere by encouraging the separation of the family. So it's just so much that's so bad about the welfare system. It needs an overhaul. And the only thing I could think that would be better would be Milton Friedman's concept of a reverse income tax. I don't know if I talked to you about this. So Milton Friedman, he's one of the great libertarian economists. He's a Nobel Prize winner, economist. And So he talks
How
about.
long ago?
Well, it's not too long ago. I mean, 70s, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think so, yeah. So one of the more modern ones, because I know he talked about Social Security and he talked about universal health care and stuff. So he's been around recently for his recent thing. Fighter says you look generally confused and didn't know how to.
Oh, that's
when he,
funny.
But honestly, when he said that, when he was like, "But I just don't feel."
You said that.
I mean, it hurt me. I was like, and I had absolutely I did not know what to say. I'm like,
may have that
because
I still have the raw.
did you?
I still have the raw footage, and he actually said that.
I was like,
he was like,
dude, you choked me up, man. I didn't know what
I have the raw
I
footage.
didn't know how to respond to
recording
that.
it for a while.
So,
that's funny.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I look genuinely confused because I was like, dude, I don't know what to say, man.
Oh,
I felt horrible. The reverse income tax though says, like if you don't make enough money, if you don't make enough money like a living wage, as I like to call it, then you would get this you would get income. It's a reverse income tax. So say you set the rate at $20,000 per year. So if you make $18,000 per year, then the government would give you $2,000. It's a reverse income tax.
Oh.
So if you make $21,000 a year, then you get taxed on that $1,000. So those numbers are just hypothetical, throwing them out there, But that's the way it works. So the less money you make, then the government would subsidize your income with that. So it's an interesting concept, and it would encourage people to still work because you're going to maintain the same amount of income up until that point, and then you just grow from there. So it's the argument. I like that concept better than a UBI, Universal Basic Income, which is they're just going to throw money at you. Everybody gets $2,000 or whatever a month, whatever it takes to actually survive. But I think that's ridiculous because, me and you don't need $2,000 a month from the government. You know what I mean? We're doing okay. So that's why I like the concept of the reverse income tax. It's a. Hey. Oh, that's right. Why is she stopping? I'm not blocking. So yeah. So that was in. Did you have that raw clip?
Oh yeah. Let me get my other phone that's charging because I didn't record with this one. So.
Oh, okay.
Let me get that. Then I'm gonna find it.
Were you thinking about the reverse income tax?
I was sitting there thinking because no one has ever. I've never heard a Republican or Democrat have anyone ever
anything Milton Friedman's talked about has been floated around, but it's not been floated around by Republicans and Democrats because he's a libertarian. They try to silence libertarians. That's why I encourage you, and my scripture that I'm going to share with you at the end of this stream is going to encourage you even more. But that's why I encourage you to share these streams. I encourage you, steal this stuff. If there's something that was really good at a particular time period in this stream, I don't keep track, and I really should, but I should really record some of the clips and stuff of me and Evolve's interactions, because this stuff needs to get shared, and we need to wake people up to libertarianism and how just moving in that direction would cause so much prosperity for everybody. They complain, well, in a free market and the libertarians, the rich are just going to get richer. Yeah, but the poor do too. And that's the thing, is yes, the rich everybody gets richer except for the government, except for the politicians, except for the special interests, the lobbyists. All that corruption and stuff that takes place in our government, those are the only ones who suffer under libertarianism. All of us benefit from it. So if you really want to, and it's proven, if you look at societies and nations that are more libertarian, the income gap is closer in those societies than it is in the United States, where we're getting further and further away from libertarianism. So I just did Milton Friedman. I need to do reverse income tax. So. Yeah, hopefully there's like a little short video on YouTube for it. I can throw it up real quick. Negative income tax is what they call it, or reverse income. Excuse me. Let's see how. This is 14 minutes. This one is. This is a 6-minute one. Oh, well, this is a 1-minute one. Let's see if this actually is any good.
The proposal for a negative income tax.
I'm trying to get it up there.
proposal for a negative income tax is a proposal to help poor people by giving them money, which is what they need, rather than as now, by requiring them to come before a governmental official, detail all their assets and their liabilities, and be told that you may spend X dollars on rent, Y dollars on food, etc., and then be given a handout. The idea of a negative income tax is to treat people who are poor in the same way as we treat people who are rich. The virtue of an income tax arrangement is precisely that it treats everybody the same way. There's none of this unfortunate discrimination among people. You have a system which stimulates abuse. It seems to me, experience suggests that our present welfare programs are clearly very much subject to this danger. Look at what's been happening. In a period of unprecedented prosperity and affluence, the number of people on the welfare rolls is skyrocketing. Why? Because once they get on, we make it almost impossible for them to get off. In order for somebody who gets on to get off, he or she has to be able to have a really good job, because to earn a little bit, get off gradually, now doesn't pay. Under a negative income tax, you would have give the poor people a possibility of getting off gradually. For a great large fraction of the people who are being helped, they have every incentive to do it themselves. If we give them the money, we will strengthen their responsibility.
Now, I have to tell you, the negative income tax is not a idea that is supported across libertarians because it still is government. But like I said, I'm all about moving the bar towards liberty. If we would shift to this type of system, can you see the benefit from it?
Oh yeah, it's a slow. Yeah, it's definitely. Sorry, I'm listening at the same time.
Oh, you're trying to find it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'll continue talking on it, but yeah, it's so yeah, that was a perfect clip because it actually didn't go into the detail that I went into it, and it just kind of gave you the benefits of what the versus what the system we have now, which encourages people to abuse the system. To have if you get paid more money for having up to 3 kids, then it encourages you to have up to 3 kids out of wedlock, because once you get married, you don't qualify. So I mean, there's so many bad things so many hoops that you have to jump through, and so many orders you have to follow, and things you have to do to maintain that welfare. So you didn't say it? You didn't get it?
I got you. I cut it off right when you were about to get into you did this brief. You was like. And then I
was like, but honestly, man,
you were about to, and I cut it off. I was like,
because and the thing is, I mean, I thought I would be a pretty good actor. I tried.
But that's fighter. Fighter's like, wow, okay. So,
but yeah, I wasn't acting.
No, you wasn't acting, right?
I couldn't even act like, I didn't know how. I mean, I just didn't have that mentality, so.
Wants that reverse income.
Yeah. But yeah, I was generally flummoxed. I didn't know how. I was like, dude, you got me, man. I was stuck. Here I am. I'm trying to play John F. Kennedy. I don't think John F. Kennedy was ever at a loss for words. No. I was like, I felt like we're like, dude. But yeah, the reverse income tax is
that's interesting.
Really a lot better, And it's something that libertarians. Even I think Justin Amash even kind of talked about it and that's one thing that of course libertarians there's we have these litmus tests or whatever that you're not libertarian enough. We get so much stuff against each other sometimes it's ridiculous.
So you mentioned something I wanted to speak on earlier off cam with you was like we're gonna need another. We're going to need another Liberation Day. We're going to need another Juneteenth. We're going to need something else. It's going to come back full circle. What do you mean by that? That we're kind of going to need we need another Liberation Day.
I think
another cleansing.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, in the kitchen.
We're not done yet. Yeah.
Yeah, we were speaking. It was more speaking on
okay, we've been liberated from slavery. We're gonna need another Juneteenth because now
You know,
we got these modern day, shackles and different stuff.
Don't get me wrong. I think I mean I don't want to take anything away from Juneteenth.
Right.
I mean that was, like I said, to me that's one of the most significant events in human history. As we finally identified slavery as something that's no longer acceptable among humanity. And it's generally the case now. I mean, for millennia, we didn't think that way. So we evolved at that point. But now I see, and then 100 years later, we finally are starting to recognize. We're now recognizing that this doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. That this guy right here is equal or better than me based off of character and based off of intelligence and based off of everything. Nothing else appearance-wise or national origin or anything else. None of those things matter anymore. It's all about character and what we have going on the inside. So we're starting to recognize that and move away. But I think as we start to embrace more of these concepts of liberty and freedom and equality, the powers that be, in order for power to remain, you can't release it. So that's the thing, is the powers that we have within our government now don't want to release that power. So as the society starts to come together as community, and we start to see each other the same, and we start to recognize our ability to live together in harmony, it's going to eliminate the need for government power. Mm-hmm. And so that is essentially, it's scary for people, for one, who see government as the safety blanket, right? Mm-hmm. As their security blanket. Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles we have as libertarians is to explain to people that your oppressor is not a security blanket. And you can imagine it as it in 1865, when some of the slaves were freed, they stayed on the plantation. Because, I mean, what do I do out there? This is the only life I've ever known. It's the same concept I think a lot of Americans have now, is when libertarians talk about, no, we need to reduce government. Government should not have the power to do this, to take from somebody to give to somebody else. People are like, well, if I don't have government supplying for me or protecting me, essentially what that means is oppressing me. Then what do I do? And I think that it's like opening the cage for somebody that's been in prison forever, for their whole life. It's that first step outside of the cage that's the scariest. And literally, animals will stand there at the gate and take hours before they come out. They've had dogs that have been caged their whole life. They open the gate and the dog will just sit there. Mm-hmm. They got this whole yard that they can go run and play and go crazy, and the dog will sit there. And they have to coax them out of the cage.
It's crazy. And
I think we have a lot more. I still think now what I think we really need to do is we need to work on the government. I mean, that's where the work needs to be done now. That's our oppressor now. That's the only institution that limits our freedom, is the government. So that's where the work has to be done, and that's where the Libertarian Party comes in. We're the only advocates for liberty. The only ones. Not even another third party advocates for liberty like we do. The Constitution Party advocates for Constitution. They don't advocate for full liberty. Like, there's some things in the Constitution that aren't beneficial to liberty.
Someone asked me, because with regards to this Juneteenth post, and someone had an interesting question. I'm going to ask you. And they were just asking, they said, so do you believe that if there was not slavery, there would not be racism? Because what they were saying is, what they're trying to say is that it was because of slavery, and then we abolished that, and this racism is basically the residue of that slavery, because we still had people in that mindset, and white supremacists today who still felt that Confederate state way. They still feel that there was a change and there was a difference in property. We had that mindset. Slavery introduced this residue of racism. So if we did not have slavery, that's what they were saying. They say,
so hypothetically, if slavery never
exists, there wouldn't be racism.
I would say there would probably still be some racism, but I think it would be definitely, because there's always a fear of something different or
Something
unknown.
that's
You know what I mean? A
sensitive.
different.
Yeah.
I mean, you have this discrimination that happens in other cultures and stuff for different reasons. So discrimination and call it racism or whatever you want exists. Tomorrow morning's stream, I want to talk about it. Talk about the caste system in India and how that is another form of discrimination.
Oh, wow.
Almost, if not worse, than what we have seen in our country. But so I think it would still exist, but I think there is something to say about the generational idea that a portion of another human is less human than you. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, they were considered, you know, and we felt the same way about Native Americans. We called them savages and stuff like that. We thought they were like animals.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, not we, but, you know, the colonists and early settlers of the United States viewed the Native Americans as savages, like animals, and African Americans were viewed as like beasts of burden. So,
that's true.
And they didn't speak English. They spoke African languages, which, if you've ever heard an African language, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I had
Clicks.
it's a lot of different sounds and stuff. It's really kind of harmonic. Yeah, and so they considered them less of a person, and so generationally, you know, you kind of we pass things on throughout generations. So yeah, it's possible that it's remnants of that mentality.
Yeah.
So where did that mentality start, though? Where did it begin? I mean, where did we begin to view people coming from Africa as less human than
Yeah,
us?
something
That's
different.
that's the big question. Is where did it? I guess it's always existed, right?
Yeah, where did it start?
Because I mean, there were slaves there's slaves in the Bible days, you know, 2,000 years.
He
ago.
speaks of that. He speaks of that. Yeah.
So I guess it was just a mentality that's always existed. But you know, like I said, I think it's finally evolution. It's finally
Where Sproul believes
there would be no racism if there wasn't slavery. But the thing is that slavery's existed for.
Yeah, you mentioned, you brought up a good point. Yeah, that's way back in even the Bible times.
Yeah.
Yeah, he mentions that.
So it's just always existed. So yeah, so it's hard to even say. You know, there was a lot of Irish slaves, even in America. It was more of an indentured servitude. Like they promised to work in order to pay for their transportation from Ireland to the United States, and then when they got here, they just never could work off the money that they owed.
Right.
You know what I mean? They just continued to build up debt, and it was indentured servitude. So you just and they still do it with like human trafficking and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of human trafficking gets started. Is, oh yeah, well, I'll pay for you, and then you can just work it off on when you get to America, and then it's just in order to pay for their apartment where they're living and their food and stuff ends up being more than they bring in. And so, you know, they start off $1,000 for the trip, and then it's like, oh, well, you know, you made $100 this week, but, you know, 99 of it has to go to pay for your apartment and pay for your food, and, you know, I have to pay for the upkeep of the store or whatever it is.
Is it just me, but with Juneteenth, is it just me, but is it not as publicized and commercials and TV and president?
Yeah.
And,
no, it's not just you.
It's
It's like I've seen a lot of people on Twitter saying, "Is it just me, or is this the first time you ever heard of it?"
Right, like.
And be honest, this is the first time I've heard of it. I think.
Yeah.
You too.
Me too.
Yeah.
You said, and I should know. You should know about.
I mean, that's why I wanted to do the stream on it, because I mean, I'm pumped up. I'm like, there's a holiday. For
like
this?
every other holiday, there's like a carving of the turkey, walking on the White House grass, or something. They do something. I don't. There's publicized.
Did our president acknowledge it?
I don't even know.
Did he throw out a happy Juneteenth?
But this is crazy. Like, where's the ads? Where's the parties? Where's the getting ready? Can we get a? Well, I guess you can't. There's nothing in stores. There's no owls in Walmart. I guess. Well, you don't want to. I don't know what you would sell. Owls. You know, owl. When I meant owls, you know how when it comes close to Valentine's, you got the Valentine's owl. When it comes close to Halloween, they create a candy owl and whatnot. So owls. What did I say? Owls.
It sounds like you said owls.
Owls, like my temple owls.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing. Like, we don't get nothing. Like, I don't. Not. There's. Besides social media, like.
Yeah.
That's it. I haven't seen, like, can we even, I don't know, maybe there's a commercial or whatnot. That's just insane though. But that was a big thing. Like, I don't know. And for it to be such a massive time, I mean,
It's so much to talk about.
it's big, but see, now you got me. Now I gotta go to this. And I'm gonna go to Donald Trump's Twitter page, and I want to see if he even mentioned.
Oh, I'm on Twitter right now.
Oh, maybe that's
Oh,
what it is.
jeez.
That's
Maybe this is his-
Maybe this is it. It's 50. He gave us 50 seconds.
As many of you know, our country is coming back very, very strong economically. The jobs numbers from 2 weeks ago were record-setting increase. We've never had anything like it. Record from day one, nobody's ever beaten it. And now retail sales numbers are incredible. We created a tremendous base so that when we had to close it up to save millions of lives, we were able to open it, and now we're doing well. So I just want to thank everybody. It's been an interesting period of time. It's been terrible. So many lives have been lost. We'll never forget those incredible people, but they will not have died in vain. Our country will go on, and we're going to be stronger than ever before.
Okay, so
thank you very much.
So what incredible people is he talking about on Juneteenth? That's more important.
The people who died. The people who died of COVID. The people who died of
I'm sorry, but okay, so we're talking.
Let's see. Anything on it here? Joe Biden's rally, zero enthusiasm.
All right. So far, we're talking about COVID on Juneteenth. We're talking about we're throwing shade at Joe Biden.
No. Let's be fair. Let's be fair. Let me go ahead.
You're going
We'll
through
throw this full screen. We'll show that I'm actually on Donald Trump's Twitter page, full screen. So here you go. This is,
okay.
Because I follow him just because of the ridiculousness.
47 minutes ago. All right. This is 3 hours ago.
So,
throwing
shade on Biden here. Zero enthusiasm. Okay. Why are Democrats and unions working against life-changing school choice?
All right, shade at Democrats.
Yeah, more shade on the Democrats.
Maybe you do this early in the morning. First thing we did. All right.
Mitch McConnell throwing more shade on the Democrats. Also delivers for the people.
All right.
Keep the Senate red. Donate. Is Mitch McConnell is a?
Got a red tie on.
I get him mixed up with the minority leader. No, Pelosi's a minority. But anyways,
3 hours. He did a lot of tweeting.
Rights for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. He's endorsing a candidate here, Brett Guthrie, a West Point graduate.
He's basically campaigning.
Yeah. He's
ducks in order.
yeah. Scott Taylor for Virginia is fighting for Virginia. He's a Navy SEAL.
He's making sure his
Pumping
people
him
that
up.
vote for him is in
Hal Rogers for Kentucky.
That's his campaign.
He's just endorsing Republican candidates across the board. There's another endorsement here 3 hours ago, James Conner. Kentucky, he's all over Kentucky, man. They're probably trying to get rid of Massey and Rand Paul. These guys are probably primary runners against Massey and Rand Paul. The two libertarians that have infiltrated the Republican Party.
No, you're talking about NFL football.
I just highly respect the mayor of Tulsa.
Now we're getting into it. 7 hours ago. So this
Okay.
is now we're getting into the morning.
Fauci has nothing to do with the NFL football. They are planning a very safe and controlled opening. However, if they don't stand for our national anthem and our great American flag, I won't be watching.
Okay, so we talked.
I'm sure the NFL is heartbroken. More shade on the Democrats allowed to make fake and fraudulent ads. They should be called out.
Soon we'll get to that 12-hour mark.
The Democrats are doing total false advertising. More shade on the Democrats. Big crowds and lines already forming for my camp, forming in Tulsa. Yep, probably paid. They do that. They pay for people to go to these rallies. I don't know if he knows that or not. But if the Dems get in, our country is in big trouble. Washington owns slaves. Rename Washington State the Seattle Pacific Autonomous Zone. Who in the world is that? It's crazy. Donald Trump retweeted Henry Rogers, Terry McAuliffe recorded saying Dems prefer Biden stay in the basement. The silent majority is stronger than ever before. God, he tweets a lot, man.
Oh!
Jeez.
Nothing today. We're at June 16th.
Oh, wow.
Nothing.
How come I just saw 10 hours ago? This says 10 hours ago right here.
Oh, so it's not in order. That's weird.
Oh, this one I like. Any
Oh,
protesters,
so-
anarchists. He called out anarchists. He called out anarchists. Anarchists. I guess he doesn't understand what. Oh, of course he does, because anarchy would mean he wouldn't have a job.
Alright, so it's 10 hours, so we're still.
Okay,
They
so
put that in because it was a retweet.
phony polls. Fox News is out with another of their phony polls done by the same group of haters.
Wait, I thought he liked Fox.
I know, I thought he did too. I'm wondering what that fake poll is now.
What?
I'm interested in this fake poll.
I thought they were road dogs. That's weird.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Right? Fox is not one of those.
I want to see it. I want to see it.
What?
Oh man, I'm not gonna be able to find that. See, that's what I like about Twitter, man. Everything's just buried.
You're a sore loser, someone
Right? Another. Did he just post another day in America? That's the first. That was 21 hours ago. So.
said. What? The world.
Oh, DACA. He did a thing about DACA immigrants, and then somebody actually called him out on that. Was like, "Oh, you're talking about eliminating DACA on Juneteenth." DACA is
Yeah.
for the kids that are born in America, immigrant kids that are born in America getting citizenship. June 18th, June 18th, June 18th.
What the world?
Nothing. So not
Our
a
president.
tweet.
The president. Wow.
Not a tweet. And they wonder why. They wonder
That's
why.
insane.
And they wonder why people think the Republican Party is so anti minority.
He didn't say. All right, now I gotta Google.
You know, and that's why. I mean, you know, the Democrats are all pro. I mean, and it's funny. I think it's planned though. You know what I mean? I honestly think the Democrats and the Republicans actually work together for these things. You know what I mean? I think it's planned. You know, they're gonna because that's how they maintain the division. I mean, if the president and stuff, you know, was promoting the same thing the Democrats were promoting, then you know it would bring the country closer together. And they don't want that. They want to keep the country divided. Both the Democrats and the Republicans benefit from this competition between the two of them. You know, if the country starts coming together, then they'll start looking at the combination of the Democrats and the Republicans as closer to the same.
Trump told Wall Street Journal that nobody had ever heard of the holiday before I brought it up. I did something good. I made Juneteenth very famous, Trump said.
Trump imitated the Trump.
What?
Is
So
it
he's
just,
taking credit.
is it just fascinating that whatever, you know, I get mesmerized as soon as you start doing your Trump impersonation. I would rather listen to Evolve do Trump than listen to Trump do Trump.
I'm done. Not a tweet.
He made it famous.
He
man.
made Juneteenth famous.
He made Juneteenth famous.
I don't know. Well, I guess we're coming up on your hour mark. You have anything else?
I think it's about 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna have to cut a big chunk of this out.
Right.
Where nobody can hear us for like 15 minutes and this whole conversation.
We got busy. I hope I got my
Yeah.
Delaware and stuff.
Yeah, about the border states.
Yeah,
Being
border
libertarian.
states. Yeah.
Libertarians. Staying out of the war. Trying
Yeah.
to be Switzerland.
They were, man. They were. They let, hey, if you want to own, you can. If you don't, you don't. So it was so mixed. It was like, you have it very well. It's pretty funny. Look it up. It's pretty crazy. So,
I'm glad I know about Juneteenth now. Though.
I am.
happy.
I am.
And I think we definitely need to spread the word about it.
We
I mean,
do.
It's especially libertarians. You know, this is actually, I bet you libertarians have celebrated it every year because, I mean, it's a significant leap in liberty. You know, I
Oh,
mean,
that's great.
Such a huge step for liberty. Now, if we could just get the African Americans where they belong
Mhm.
in the Libertarian Party, you know, you want real liberty, here it is.
There you go.
Trust me, you get to be who you want and we'll love you for it.
For sure.
You know, that's the thing about libertarians. I mean, if you look at our national convention, you see, I mean, it's just such a wide range. But you know, Nicholas Wildstar, he calls himself the unicorn, right?
Okay.
Because he's a black libertarian. And I'm like, I don't see that. You know, I was looking at some Donald Trump tweets and stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of the hate, and a lot of the hate that I don't know, maybe it's just because of how Twitter, what Twitter shows me, but I'm noticing a lot of African Americans that are very much libertarian.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking Mr. Wildstar, Governor Wildstar, is a little bit over exaggerating the amount of African Americans we have in the Libertarian Party.
Oh, okay.
So, because I think they're, and I think, you know, like I said, as the you know, the generational thing, you know, that, you know, as I mean, they're getting to that point where they're catching up. You know what I mean? Because the advancement is significant when it's early on. You know, so the generational thing where you know, we've had 8 generations or 9 generations to get a head start, you know, economically and educational and all this other stuff. And you know, African Americans have, you know, maybe 3 generations. But that increase now that it's a level playing field, so to speak, the educationally and wealth wise and everything else significant is starting to catch up very rapidly. And I think as that level of you know, the societal level catches up, we'll get more and more libertarians, because I think they're going to realize that this system is rigged against us, and the only system that can actually benefit us is a free system, a truly free system, like the stuff that they fought the Civil War for, that level of freedom, you know, that they never actually received until.
Great point. Well said. It's great stuff. I do want to know. Definitely, guys, put in the comments. Did you know about Juneteenth?
Yeah, right.
I want to know what you all thought. I want to see where everybody was at, man.
Because I literally, when did I learn? When did I hear about it? Juneteenth.
I think I heard about it like 2 days ago.
When I told you
Tuesday.
I think it's on the Tuesday stream. I was like, hey, you heard of Juneteenth? And you're like, no. You're like, oh, slaves. You know, and you did a paper on slavery in Temple, right?
I did.
College?
Yeah. Whole slavery and the inner working, what you don't know.
Actually, I think I learned about it through LP Texas. I think made a post about it.
Oh.
Or when the Libertarian Party advertised the podcast I just showed. I need to link that too. The LPTV podcast. I'll put it in chat and in the description. Yeah, so I think that's when I learned. It was maybe a few days ago, maybe 2 days before you, probably Sunday or something. So you know, I do try to keep up with current events, but yeah, it's just interesting that it's so not known. So I want to. Oh man, I almost forgot about this.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. If y'all didn't notice, let me put don't do that. I hope I didn't change that. Juneteenth LP podcast, so I just put that in the description also. 500 subs.
Hey.
I just want to say
big
thank you.
To you.
Yeah, that Endure video, man, all of you that shared it, I want to say, you know, thanks a bunch. I mean, that's definitely my highest sub count from a single video.
That's a name.
That I've gotten from any, and I love it because that is probably the best video I have felt. You know what I mean?
It was
that just
really good.
just inspirational the whole way through, and such a great video. And I mean, it's just so encouraging to know that so many people enjoyed it and felt so good about it that they hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, you kept getting subs. Like, even when you told me you were up at 500, because I knew it had been the first 24, like 48 hours, and I was like, I came yesterday. I think he was like, I got 5. I was like, wait, you got another boost?
Yeah.
Usually, because
Anyone that knows 70 and then another 40.
Yeah, anyone that knows YouTube knows that you get everything, and as far as views and everything, you get all that within your life. They say 24, but it's usually in the first 10 hours. But after that,
it was up to like 7,000 views, man. This thing is almost hitting 10K views.
7,000.
It's like 7,000 views.
That's awesome.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And it's something I have felt passionate about for years. I mean, almost a decade.
Still at just one dislike on
I
7,000.
think it's just one dislike.
On 7,000 views.
Yeah, I think so. Let's check it out.
What?
Let me see real
That's
quick.
crazy numbers.
Well, you know that dislike don't count, right? It's too much love for that one little hate to count. 6.8 thousand views.
Wow.
Six-
One dislike. Oh, you know,
129 likes.
That's so likes, dude. That's awesome.
So 100, because there's over 100 likes, the one dislike don't even count. So in the studio, you can see the percentage of likes, and it just says 100% like. So what that told me was like, no matter how much hate gets thrown your way, if you get enough love, it don't even count.
Ooh, so love conquers all.
That's right. That's right.
Leads you into your scripture.
Yeah.
Scripture in mind.
I don't know those scripture.
What?
Actually, it's about the sharing though. So the scripture I want to share is from Matthew chapter 5. It's right after the Beatitudes.
Okay.
Where Jesus calls us the salt of the earth. I have it right here. It's already marked. 'Cause this is what we're studying. And you're gonna get this because I'm gonna share a lot of stuff that we share every morning in our morning Bible study.
Okay.
So it's Matthew 5 and 13. Why is 13 such a good number in the Bible? You know, like Galatians 5:13.
Oh yeah.
And the number 13. I think you're trying to make it seem like it's bad luck. That's the devil trying to do that. 13's good.
There you go.
13. So this is Matthew 5:13. It says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet." So this is about sharing the good works and sharing. The salt of the earth means that you only have to sprinkle a little bit of salt to add flavor to the whole plate. So it's about how, to me, the way it touched me was, us as Christians or as Libertarians, it is up to us to go out and flavor the world with love and kindness, of course. And if we allow ourselves to be polluted by those around us and lose our inspiration or our connection to God or to our beliefs, then the world will just run us over. And that's being trampled. If you lose the salt loses its flavor, you be trampled under feet because, as Christians especially, if we allow the world to pollute our message of Christ, then once they've done that, they'll just run us over.
Yep.
And you see it happen time and time again with Christians and even with Libertarians. I mean, we have to stand firm. And the thing is to get out there and be the salt of the earth, though. We have to go out there and flavor, people's lives and share these messages of liberty and love.
Well said. Well interpreted.
Yeah.
It's good. It's great.
Pastor went in a lot more detail about it.
No, that's good stuff.
He's a little bit better at it.
Yeah. I just say KIP, positive.
Thank you so much, y'all, and happy Juneteenth. Juneteenth, do something. Go barbecue and I don't know, get a piñata or I don't know what the celebrations are.
Oh, thank you, Tel. Tel was one of the ones that shared it for you.
Oh, definitely, Tel. Appreciate it. And I appreciate you holding it. You in 5th grade, man, be holding it down for me in the comments. And I appreciate that. You're my troll warriors. Appreciate you guys.
Oh,
I wish I could give out badges, right?
Oh, right.
Like the anti-trolls.
There you go. The kid said that he's learned so much.
Oh man, I'm glad to hear it. Glad to hear it.
right?
But I also ended on a little bit of sad news, I guess. Not really sad.
Oh yeah, you got your announcement.
This is probably going to be my last Friday live stream. I'm going to set up the new schedule and post it. I'm going to go Saturday mornings, Tuesday evenings. About this time is when I'll be starting my Tuesday podcast for all of you here in the States. It should be a good time. You can either sit down and have dinner with me, or if you're on the East Coast, it'll be 8 o'clock. West Coast, it'll be 5 o'clock. And I just think it's a good time, and I need that break in between, because I want to try to put out more upload content. I want to be able to go through the podcast and pull out some stuff that was really good speaking points and upload those as individual videos. I also want to get better at my editing and do more Libertarian Minutes, because I think the Libertarian Minutes are reaching more people. And then these will be available for Q&As and stuff.
Be sure to tell them about the new series that's coming, G Liberty series.
Oh yes.
You guys
And we have some raw footage of one little tiny libertarian.
Oh, you're not showing the raw footage.
No, I'm not going to show the
okay.
raw footage. No, I'm going to do that. So I'm editing it, so it's going to take a little bit of while. We'll work on it, and we're going to get the first episode of G Liberty Minute. Be a couple of minutes probably, but out there. So these are the things I think are going to have a really big impact. I love the live streams because it's interaction with you guys. So I want to try to do uploads during the week and then hit these live streams to cover thoughts and comments on the uploads and current events and stuff like that. So the live streams probably will be a little bit more extended, especially that Saturday one. But the uploads, hopefully, I'm really trying to focus on that, getting these uploads for y'all to share, and because I think these 3-minute, 4-minute videos are really significantly educational and inspiring. So I think you guys love them. So I'm gonna try to do that more. But it's probably my last Friday stream. So I love y'all so much. Thank you so much for all the shares, compliments, all the everything you guys do to help me out and encourage me. I really appreciate it. I really do, and it keeps me motivated. That and this massive motivation. So thank you so much. I love y'all. God bless you. Love your neighbor, and KIP. Keep it positive.